Welcome to Encounter Grace. I'm Jason McKnight, and I'm glad you're here. This is part 2 of our 3-part series, Leading with Increased Capacity. In the last episode, Justin Tillman talked about the overlap of spiritual leadership with our emotional capacity and our relational maturity. What we're going to do in this segment is something completely out of my comfort zone. We're going to talk neuroscience. In fact, we've discovered in the last generation of research, or 2 generations of research, that, are you ready for this? The way God designed the brain means that it follows the same process in every interaction. And we can enhance that process as we go through interactions, even though stuff is happening precognitively. We can actually think about it and enhance what goes on for relational and spiritual and emotional strength. So I'm the one that does the teaching from a recent leadership lab here at Grace Fellowship in this segment, and so enjoy as you listen. Emotional capacity, relational skills or maturity, spiritual maturity. This is new. This is new to think of them all interweaving, and yet at the same time, the moment you say it, you're kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So let's keep walking a little bit. When I went to seminary, people go to seminary to learn how to, exegete scripture and do pastoral counseling and do systematic theology, learn church history. And a lot of it's pretty spiritual and a lot of it isn't. And one of the things that's not that spiritual is learning the syntax of Greek and learning the syntax of Hebrew. I mean, it just doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. If you know that, you can learn things that lead you on better. What I'm going to do is going to teach you Greek and Hebrew right now. What I'm going to talk about is learning the syntax of what's going on inside the cranium that will help you. Now, these are not necessarily Christian principles. This isn't fruit of the Spirit, but this is how the neural pathways are actually functioning right now. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do is take a little, about 25, maybe 28 minutes, and then have a break on how your brain is wired, how my brain is wired. And let me tell you, this has been super helpful for me to learn over the last 4 years. After a bit of a crisis moment in our family, and I realized, and Susan helped me realize, there were some severe shortcomings in my maturity. And how can I address those? And by God's grace, I started addressing it with a friend on the journey, a counselor, a friend, a coach, use whatever word you want, a spiritual director, but someone who was on the outside in love with the scriptures and the Lord and the Spirit, saying, oh, here's some ways that you don't even know what's going on, but let me show you what's going on. And it has just helped. And then we've been able to read it. All right, so what you see as you turn over the page is at the top there, brain science discoveries. Our brains run on the fuel of joy. Let me just say that. What is joy? Our brains run on the fuel of joy. Just pop that on your page. I just love that line, that our brains are wired to run on the fuel of joy. Wired to run means God has done it. And here's the fun thing, is that science is catching up to Scripture. I just love it when that happens. In the last, say, 25 years, the discoveries in neurological insights, the MRIs and the ability, we love the, where's Emma with the Epic? We love how you can see inside the womb now with the new technology, and it's 4K and it's unbelievable. Well, the same thing is being applied to the brain, and we're watching processes that 20, 30 years ago we could never watch, and now we're seeing how our brains run, and it turns out our brains run on the fuel of joy. You watch the Olympics, how many of you saw commercials to do with joy? I was shocked. Of course, I was prepping this, so I noticed it. You probably didn't notice it. But it was amazing to think of how much now joy is filling in. But guess what? Nehemiah knew it all those years ago. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Well, what does that mean? The joy of the Lord is my power. The joy of the Lord is my fuel. The Lord put this in Scripture for us to discover later. Our brains, when they work best, are fueled by ambition, pride, shame. No, joy. When our brains are working at their best, It's not comfort or complacency that drives them. It's not pride that drives them. It's joy that drives them. And in about 30 minutes, you'll understand why. So what is joy? Well, I think, let me give you a few different definitions. You see, there's not just a four-word definition. There's a few different things we'll pop in here, and you'll probably add some to this as you go. What is joy? Well, how about this? It's a sense of well-being in our deepest core, in the deepest part of our soul, this anchored contentment inside of us, a sense of well-being in our deepest core. It's a grasp or a sense that our relationships are good. Do you have joy when there's strife at home? Joy somehow, and we're going to say, oh wait, joy's not circumstantial. No, but we are relating, and so somehow there is a deep joy when our relationships are good. Now, why would that be? Here's why. Because the Lord has wired us to be in relationship to Himself. I mean, the whole point of your life is to relate to Him. Oh, now it makes sense why joy is part of that. Joy can be described as an I'm glad to be with you sense that we have from others. They're really glad I showed up. This is, by the way, this is one of the keys of house church. When you open your living room and people come and they know when they step in there, there's going to be laughter and smiles and, hey, we're glad you're here tonight. Our brains need to hear that, and we sense that. Since we're wired to be relationship, God links joy in our life to others in our life. We're not just wired to be in relationship with Him, but also with each other. So we don't want to be codependent, but interdependent with each other. I'm glad to be with you. I love that we're in this together. Joy is the center of our identity. So in our brains, and we'll look at this in just a second, our identity center is exactly the same as our joy center. That means who you are at the God-designed core of who you are is where joy is. It's where joy is stored and regenerated and sent out from to the rest of your character and actions. The baseline of our identity as God created us and characterized us is in a state of joy. You're most like the true you when you're not driven by fear or pride or ambition or complacency or shame, but by joy. Does that make sense? Now, if it doesn't make sense, write it down anyway and let it percolate. Let it percolate in. I'm at home. I've got anchored contentment. Our brain runs on joy. Okay. Now, you knew I would have to have a little chart here. So I got a chart, and because I did not want to attempt to draw a brain or to grab one off the internet because it gets a little bit weird because some of these different levels are really small, we're going to just pretend this is your brain. There's a right hemisphere in your brain and a left hemisphere in your brain. There is an elevator that runs up and down. I'm going to give you the answer right there. It's the joy elevator. I'm just going to put that, you can, in the blue there, the joy elevator. And what we're going to talk about are the 4 levels, basically, of the right hemisphere. That's what we're going to talk about. First of all, though, let's think about this. What are the differences between your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere? What are the differences? Now, you kind of, there's a lot of ways to think about this. Before we think about the differences between them, let me do this. Here's what we're discovering is that our experiences, as we experience something, a conversation with someone, or we're driving down the road and there's a car accident up there and we just discover it and whatever it is. And everything that we come up on, the data, the information, the experience, the whatever, is processed by our right side before it can be processed by the left side. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. It's processed by the right side, and more than that, it's processed down there at level 1, 2, 3, 4, before being kicked over, ideally, to the left hemisphere. Now, hang on to that, and we'll come back to that in 1 second. I told you I was going to do some syntax like in Greek and Hebrew. No, we'll figure this out. You're going to know what those 4 levels are and why. But here's the differences between the left and the right hemisphere, just for fun right now. The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. On the left hemisphere, we see the world as it in its component parts, but on the right hemisphere, we see the whole picture. We see, and it's an image-oriented world. And I'll at the end, there's Nydia taking pictures. Wait till the end, and I'll give you the whole picture. Image-oriented on the right, but word or verbal-oriented. You see a picture with your right hemisphere, and you think about it and figure it out on the left. So reason and solves versus emotion and intuits. The right sees the person, the left sees the problem. Now you can take the picture, Nydia. The right sees the person, the left sees the problem. The whole picture on the right, its component parts, the solution orientation. The engineers, let's say, versus the artistic types. Now, that's not 100% true at all, but that maybe can help to link it. Now, as we say, these, by the way, these are not the four parts of the four. This is just helping you understand right and left hemisphere. We're going to get to the four levels in a second. But you can think about every experience you have as entering your brain through this right hemisphere, this whole picture, image-oriented person, emotion, intuitive side of you. And the whole thing just comes in right there before you can break it down and figure out what's going on or figure out what to do about it. In fact, right now, you may be taking this all in, but then maybe you're saying, wait a minute, another part of your brain is saying, well, is Jason trustworthy? Is this stuff really true? Is this a safe group? Is my house leaking because of the rain? You know, these other things going on. You're thinking of a bigger picture. The right hemisphere processes the whole picture all at once, including the relationships. And it's where our emotions are rooted and our sense of identity is formed and our sense of belonging. So as something happens to us, it's being processed intuitively, precognitively, almost you could say emotionally as a whole, as it relates to our sense of identity, before we ever process it logically or solution-oriented. Our brains are just doing this. Here's why. The right hemisphere processes 20% faster. 6 times a second versus 5 times a second. So anything you experience, this side has already figured or thought something or done something about it before it gets over to the verbal side to break it down and answer it. It's already happening over here. That's why when you're, back in the day, when you'd go to the cemeteries at night because you were a teenager having fun, hijinks. And you hear, you hear something crackle in the distance over there, and you panic and you get all, you're all keyed up. Oh yeah, it's John, and he's finally gotten here with the flashlights or whatever. Like finally you get the message, but your hands got sweaty for that split second because what was that? What happened there? Our right hemisphere is working faster than the left. Okay, but the processing actually happens one phase at a time over here on the right hemisphere. And it's going up the elevator if the elevator doesn't get stuck. So everything comes in, all the experiences, all the information or data, it comes in, and it ideally in God's design, first, second, third, fourth level, and then comes over to the left hemisphere. And ideally, it gets all the way up and goes over. And for the best outcomes in life, the most flourishing outcomes in your marriages and in your leadership teams and in your friend groups and all that kind of stuff, to be effective and fruitful and freeing, that elevator would get all the way up to the fourth level every time before going over to solve something or answer something. But the problem is, every single one of those levels is connected to the left hemisphere. And if ever the elevator gets stuck at whatever level, it kicks right over to the left hemisphere for action. And if I'm not far enough up, I'm going to be acting prematurely. I'm going to be acting immaturely. I'm going to be acting before I should, but I don't even know this is going on. So this is why we're talking about it. God has designed these 4 levels that when we can learn them, we can act more in line with who He is and how He's wired us to live in joy. I mean, okay, so here's an example. Family's on a walk after dinner. 2 little girls, mom and a dad, and they're going for a walk, and the little girl is holding her dad's hand, and the dog 2 houses down comes running and barking. Now, we've been on this walk before. This dog has come down before. We've seen this dog. It's Buster. We love Buster, all that kind of stuff. But this little girl, 4 years old, holding her dad's hand, at that moment grabs like vice grip tight, cuts off all the circulation to her dad's hand, and responds in fear and panic and terror. Because 2 months ago, she was bitten by a dog. And now every dog is going to bite her. But it's Buster. You know him. Well, before you can say that in your left hemisphere of that little girl's brain, she's just thinking of the pain and the fear and the canine and the barking and all that kind of stuff. And she just knows. And all she can do, because she's kicked over here, instead of going all four, she can say, Dad, save me, help. Fear is determining her actions in that moment. The elevator got stuck somewhere, and she didn't get to the point of saying, oh, that's Buster, that's not that mean dog. This stuff happens all the time in all of our lives. So what do we do about it? Well, let's talk about the 4 hemispheres, because or the 4 levels, because I think that will help us. And I'm just going to tell you, this helped me. Like, learning this, it's kind of like breathing, right? You breathe without thinking about it. But you can also think about your breathing and change it. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about stuff that we don't even think about because it's precognitive, but we can also think about it and over time change the way we react, respond, and move. Does that make sense? So let's start at the bottom, at the first of them, the attachment center. And I apologize for since I had 4 lines there, some of you thought it was the 4 things already. But anyway, the attachment center, the biological name is the thalamus and the nucleus accumbens. And I offer those, but I'm not saying that because I'm an expert in neuroscience. I read them in several of the books. But it basically, let's just call it the attachment center. It is the deepest part of the brain, the most basic thing about us, the earliest part of our brains to form after we're born. I'm looking over at Caroline and Garrett because Stevie is over there, little baby Stevie. This attachment center is developing in her, or developed, I forget how old she is. But nothing else matters to a newborn except bonding, attaching, right? Bonding, if you're taking notes, to mom and dad. By God's design, the deepest part of who we are wants to be bonded and attached to another. First and foremost, we're looking to relate. We're looking to belong. We're looking to be known. We're looking to be loved. This isn't an extrovert-introvert thing. It's how humans are wired to make sense of the world and to do life and to carry out our days. God wired us to live in the context of people we are attached to, related to, bonded to. So, what happens when you see a baby? What is a baby doing? Let's say in the gathering hall on a Sunday morning, and there's as little a baby as you can find, let's say. And by the way, since COVID, we're not touching all the babies, right? Keep a good distance. But what you're doing, what you see is that baby is looking around at who's going to make eye contact with me. The baby is looking for someone to attach to. Now, maybe a shy baby is really only looking for mom and dad. And maybe this is where the extroverted baby is out there looking for 4 more people to attach to. And that's okay, but every baby's looking to attach. Now, flip the script. What are you doing when you see a baby? Not super young, but now a little bit, but already in the, what are you doing when you have the time and you know the people and it's appropriate? What do you do when you see the baby? You look at them in the eye and try to get them to smile, right? And I've seen the toughest guys in the room get all googly with a little 9-month-old trying to get them to smile. And it's hilarious. Why? Because there's something in us that wants that little one to smile. There's something there. That's called attachment, the attachment center. We want to be bonded to people. We want to be bonded to something. And so even we want the little baby. I mean, it's just our friend's kid, but we want them to be bonded. Even we want to make them know, we're glad to see you. This is a good thing. What happens if someone's ignored? What happens if someone's ignored or left alone? Well, if you're a baby, and this is like lifelong stuff, counseling in the future, you can't bond with joy. You can't bond where people are glad to be with you if you're ignored. What happens if someone encounters anger or disgust? Imagine that little baby looking for someone to bond with, and all they get is the disgust from a dad or the anger from a mom. You can't bond with joy. What is that baby going to learn to bond with, that little one, as they grow? Fear. You bond with joy or you bond with fear. With fear, meaning I've got to earn my place to receive any good attention. And fear starts to shape their attachments. Now, that's a baby. It also happens in our lives, even in our interactions now. You can bond with joy or you can bond with fear in a conversation or in a house church or in a larger setting or on a ministry team. I got to earn my place only. Now, for sure, when you go to work, you have to earn your paycheck, right? It's a contractual relationship. And if you're going to join a team here at church, you got to show up when you say you will. Okay, that's great. But the point is not that you are always on trial and you have to prove yourself at every time. In the family of God, also, while we hold to high standards for excellence, also we bond. We're glad you're here. I'm glad you're serving today. And that goes a long way as people attach. Okay, so the attachment center is the beginning. Now, any interaction, any experience that you come up on, any conversation you have with someone comes in, you experience it in your world in the right hemisphere at the attachment center. Am I alone? Am I able to bond with the person? Do I want to, or do I want to just shut down? Or have they shut down? It's those things are going on right now. And listen, we see this all the time, right? If you're raising kids, toddlers, school age, middle school, high schoolers, you see people shut down their relational circuits. They don't want to bond with you right now. They give you one-word answers and don't make eye contact, right? We've all had teenagers. That's just what's going on right here. They're feeling like they don't want to be connected or that you're not connecting. The first way people experience and interpret is in this attachment level. So let's use an illustration for this and call it the light on or the circuit. You turn the relational circuit on, or you turn the light on. Do y'all remember Motel 6? I'm Tom Bodette from Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you. Well, that's what we're saying here at the attachment center. We'll leave the light on for you. I want to engage with you. You're welcome into my space or into this place right now. Okay, the flip side is I don't have my light on. I don't want to talk to you. Go away. How am I going to tell you that? One-word answers. I'm not going to make eye contact. We all get that. All right, then we move on to the second level. If your relational circuits stay on, if you leave the light on and you say, all right, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm still going to relate, the elevator can move up. If it doesn't, the elevator kicks it over to action, and that's why you give one-word answers and all that kind of stuff. But if you say, all right, I'm going to keep my relational circuits on, I'm going to try to relate, then it kicks up to the assessment center. From the welcome light, Tom Bodette in Motel 6 in number 1, now in number 2, the second floor of the assessment center is, we're going to call it the guard shack. So now you've got a guard shack guarding what goes up the elevator any further. And here at the assessment level, your brain is assessing the situation that's in front of you, and it's only going to give one of three answers. This is good, this is bad, this is scary. Just write that down. This is good, this is bad, or this is scary. If an experience is assessed as good, that elevator can go up to floor number 3. If it's assessed as scary, the elevator, before the elevator, it can be assessed as scary, and then what's triggered? Anger or fear. Now remember we said the big 6 negative emotions, anxiety or fear, and anger, the 2 A words, anxiety and anger. And anxiety just goes big to become fear. Anger or fear, fight or flight, right? That's what's going on. This is the level where fight or flight kicks in. I'm either going to stand my ground or I'm out of here. Like Monty Python, run away. Anger and fear are high energy reactions because they elevate your physiological, engagement. Your heart rate goes up. Your adrenal system is engaged. When you get angry, when you get fearful. And we've all had that rush. I mean, even watching some movies and you get sweaty palms when they're on the edge of the cliff or whatever. Okay. Good, this is scary. What happens? Anger or fear, fight or flight are engaged, high energy reactions. But there are low energy reactions as well. And this is when the assessment center says this is bad. Good, scary, bad. When it's bad, what are the other 4 negative emotions that we already looked at? We've already tackled anger and fear. So if something's assessed as bad, the low energy reactions are triggered of maybe sadness or despair or shame or disgust, or some combination of them. But those 6 negative emotions, almost all the negative emotions you and I can have are some combination of those 6. And these low energy ones, sadness, shame, disgust, despair, they drive us down. They don't amp us up like anger and fear, but they kind of drive us down. Now, here's what you need to know about the assessment center. This is good, this is scary, this is bad. Okay? It doesn't solve it, it just says it. For the elevator to keep going up, all you have to know at this assessment center, at the guard shack, is who's coming in. It doesn't matter. It will still, even if it's a scary situation, once you know it, the elevator can go up to the 3rd level. If it's a bad situation, the elevator can go up. So you can say, oh yeah, I'm angry right now. But as long as you own that, your elevator of joy can keep moving. Does that make sense? If you don't know it, you come over here, it kicks over because all levels are attached to the left to the action side, all of them, and now you start acting on the anger you don't know is there, or the fear that you don't understand is driving you, or the shame, or sadness or despair. So all it takes for the assessment center to send the elevator up one more is that you recognize this is good, this is bad, this is scary. That's it. And then we go up to the 3rd level, which is the attunement center. I didn't tell you the medical term for the assessment center, but it's amygdala, or I don't know how you, Princess Amygdala, I don't know. Amygdala. But now we're at the attunement center, and this is the cingulate cortex. So you can Google that later. What is the attunement center? All right, well, once we're working to be relational, once we've assessed what happens, the elevator can keep going up. And this is happening again 6 times per second in your brain before you're thinking about it. But just like breathing, you can think about it and change it. The attunement center, this is where we seek to attune to people in the situation. We seek to find out if someone understands us. We take a little extra moment to try to make sure we understand the situation. So either understand the situation or that we're understanding and someone understands us. Does that make sense? I'm sending out signals and hopefully they're bounced back to me. So what's the illustration here? Radar. It's a radar system. This 3rd level, it's not the guard shack, it's not the Tom Bodette keeping the light on. It's a radar system. You're sending out signals, hoping someone understands you. You see, you can be attached to someone and you say, I'm going to keep those relational circuits on, but they still don't understand you. We've all had those fights with our wives and husbands, right? We know we love them, but they're just not getting it. They're not understanding what I'm trying to say. Or I'm not understanding what they're trying to tell me. Have you been in a group conversation? Let's say there's 3 of you in the group conversation, and you're trying to get your point across, and this guy gets it and this guy doesn't. This person gets it, this person doesn't. And you're trying to get the point across to the person who doesn't get it, and what do? At a certain point, you make eye contact with the guy who does get it. Am I making sense? Or am I being confusing? Because, but that quick look is that attunement level, because I'm getting frustrated and not bad, like we're all of goodwill. It's just, it happens. So I send the quick eye contact over to Mark to say, am I making sense here? And then we figure that out. We are reading people and reading situations. I mean, this is happening in your house church settings. This is happening at cocktail parties. This is happening wherever you are. You're always sending things out to see if someone's understanding you. It's not just in high fraught. Have you ever heard of the term emotional intelligence? Daniel Goleman at Harvard Business School, 30 years ago? I mean, how long ago was that he developed emotional intelligence? 35, 40 years ago. He stumbled right on this attunement stuff without knowing any of the neuroscience, because they didn't have it back then. But this idea that you can read a situation, read a room, be self-aware enough, and emotionally intelligent leaders are the ones that can go the farthest, is Daniel Goleman's idea. All right, that's one way to say attunement center, emotional intelligence, EQ. How about mutual mind? Some researchers call this mutual mind state, where you and another person are thinking the same things and you know it. You just know somebody else gets you at this moment. This is where eye contact is unbelievably important. I think one of the hard things about Zoom is that you can never quite make eye contact, because in order to look in your eyes on Zoom, I gotta look at your eyes, but then I'm not looking at the camera, which allows you to look in my eyes, So we never quite can do it. So you get 85, 90, 92% of the communication ability. But when I can make eye contact with someone, and Jesus says it's a light into the soul. I mean, there's something special about eye contact, and you're thinking the same thing? I'm thinking that too. Mutual mind, emotional intelligence. Other researchers call it synchronizing with people. You can look up all those things, and that's all. The point here at this level of attunement, of radar center, looking to see if someone understands me in the middle of what's going on. Am I being understood? Do you get what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm getting at? What happens when you know that one person gets it? Your confidence deepens. You're not alone. Okay, it wasn't me being a total idiot getting it across. I need to alter something, but at least you understand what I'm trying to say, and actually you might be able to help better, because I clearly am not, but that all is okay. There's a lessening of anxiety and insecurity and uncertainty. There's a raising of peace in the attunement center. By the way, love, joy, peace, fruit of the Spirit, love, attachment center of our brains. We're looking to love and be loved. That's what another word for attachment is, love. Peace here in the attunement center. We're looking to have peace, to understand where we are and not to live in uncertainty, insecurity, lack of confidence. And then joy is everything going on here. Now, can I give you, as we're here at the Attunement Center, can I give you one big thing on the side? Big thing. It almost should be the middle thing. A huge gift of this attunement level design feature in your brain is that we can also attune with God. We can synchronize with God. We can grow. Now this may sound almost New Age. We can grow into a mutual mind state with the God and Father of us all. Now, I don't mean to sound New Age, and I'm not New Age. The point is we don't think like this, but here's the deal. If God is Emmanuel, God with us, if Jesus sent his Spirit to live in us, I mean, Grant just preached this morning on John 14 where I am, or the Father is in me, Jesus says, and then a little bit later, I will come to you, Jesus says, in the Spirit. So he's living in us. He is Emmanuel. We're united to him. We're partakers of the divine nature. His Spirit is in us. Isn't it unbelievable that you and I can think God's thoughts after him and can ask him what he's thinking? You got to have your Bible open when you do it. Don't have no crystals. Forget it. We're not going down that road. You got to have your Bible open, but say, Lord, I just had this fight with Susan. What are you thinking about how I responded to her? That's a fair prayer, isn't it? Give him time to speak to you. What are you thinking about what she said? Because she might be the one totally in the wrong. It hasn't happened in our marriage yet, but it might happen one day. Or at work when you can't figure out why you're not jiving. Well, Lord, what do you think about this situation? What is this except synchronizing with the Lord? And the beautiful thing about synchronizing with the Lord is it's us going to his frequency 8 days a week. 8 days a week. But what an unbelievable gift this attunement level design in your brain and in mine is, that we can get there and say, Lord, I want to see what you're thinking here. Would you help me? Boy, that's a great one. Okay, from attachment level, assessment level, attunement level, now if your elevator keeps going up, now you get to the action center or the orbital prefrontal cortex, the very last part of the brain to develop. And as we've said, when we're talking about this kind of stuff, the stuff comes into your right hemisphere and ideally by design goes all the way up to the fourth, and now it gets kicked over to the left hemisphere for solutions and answers. But the joy elevator has brought it through. Yes, I'm not alone in this. Yes, I understand if this is good, bad, or scary. Yes, someone understands me, or if I'm alone, I can at least say, God, what do you think? And that still is part of the joy of the Lord is my strength, the brain running on joy. This deep sense in our core that all will be well. And then we get up to the action center. And if the elevator gets to this point in a situation, in an experience, and whatever's going on, and you still haven't kicked it over at level 1, 2, or 3, and you get all the way up to level 4, you're in business. I'm just telling you. You are in business. Things are going to turn out much better than if you tried to solve it over here at level 2. Because you know why? When you kick it over at level 1, 2, or 3, you're either going to solve the wrong problem or you're going to solve it in the wrong way. Right? If you don't know that you're angry and you start making an action plan, but you haven't accounted for the fact that you're angry, you're just going to solve it in the wrong way. So God's designed our brains to run on joy. It is the supernuclear fuel that regenerates and brings better outcomes than anything we can imagine. This prefrontal cortex, this fourth level, the action center, the executive function center, the joy center, it's also the identity center. Remember at the beginning, we said the joy center is the identity center. This is what we're talking about. When you act the best possible way, it's when you haven't given up joy and your elevator has gotten all the way up to level 4 so that then it can send out how to act over here to the left hemisphere. The joy center is our identity center. Who we are most truly is who we are when we're being led by joy, right? That's who we are most truly. I think if you're a parent or a babysitter, or a grandparent, you get that because you know when the kids have pressed all your buttons and they've seen the worst side of you, and you know that's not who you really are. because you just reacted with fear or with anger or with disgust as they're picking their nose and wanting to wipe it on you. That's disgusting. But how do we get that joy elevator keep going? Well, part of how we do that is knowing about it. The thing that gave me so much freedom is that I discovered that there were big 6 negative emotions. I didn't know why I was always getting overly angry at small things. I just didn't know why. And that I couldn't process to keep my cool. Well, when I discovered there are 6 negative emotions, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get a vocabulary for it. And then when Justin was talking earlier about the capacity, well, if your box is this big, it's going to overflow all the time. Well, that was what was happening to me. But when the box grows, because I can understand how to bring things farther up in the brain, then my box all of a sudden can get bigger and I can realize this is good, bad, scary, and I don't have to fly off the handle. I can wait and digest it and pray about it. And Lord, what do you think about it? Or who else is seeing this? And those types of things is what we're going to talk about in the third, how to put all this stuff into practice. This is a lot of knowledge, but it's also very practical. Because now that you know what's going on in the right hemisphere and what can hinder it, you're going to start seeing tonight, tomorrow, and the next day, I guarantee you, you're going to start seeing ways that, oh, I just short-circuited. I just went over to solving something and I realized it was while I was angry and not knowing it. Or I felt so misunderstood, I just lashed out. So this has been practical. What we're going to do after the break is we're going to get even more practical and talk about 2 skills that you also can practice over the next week.